Hazey podcast.
Welcome to Coach Hazey's podcast. Today we have a special guest, Chris Ramsey, MBE, who was an assistant first team coach and head of player development at Spurs. He was also a national team coach for England under-17s and a first team manager and academy technical director at QPR. Today we'll be talking about his coaching journey, player development and much, much more. Okay, welcome to Coach Hazey's podcast, and today we've got a special guest, his legend in the game, Chris Ramsey. How we doing?
Yeah, good, mate. Thanks for inviting me.
No, a pleasure for coming on. Tell us about, your coaching journey. Where did it start? How you got involved, because you are a legend. You've helped me and I've learned a lot off of you. So yes, let's go.
Well, I mean, most of my coaching, I took my first badge at 21, and I didn't coach then for till I was 28, 29, when I went to Malta as a player, and then ended up becoming the player manager for 3 years. So I did that, and then when I left Malta, I came back to England, did my full license, and ended up at Orient. Which is a football in the community. I was in football in the community, as you know. It's probably learned a lot from that, probably more than anything else. So I did that at QPR, Brentford, Orient, and Wimbledon. Couldn't really get a job in the Centre of Excellence at the time, so I did that. And unfortunately for me, I met Ozzy Abanji when I was at uni, and he introduced me to the guy that was doing the football in the community at Orient, and then. The rest at Orient was history. It's a guy called Grant Cornwall, and I ended up then going to Orient as the head of youth development with Paul Brush, and I spent 3 years there learning my trade. And during that time, I was at uni. I was doing a women's team as well for 3 seasons. So that was a good introduction into varying your communication and dealing with different characters and different people, which was a first for me. From there, I got headhunted by the FA. I went there as regional director for London and the South East. Was assistant to Howard Wilkinson, and during my time at the FA, I worked with all the England teams from under 16 to under 20. Became the head coach of the under 20s. I've done a lot of coach education there, and fitness. I helped write the fitness award there, because really I'm probably more a fitness person than football, if I'm being honest. From there I left and went to Luton, assistant manager with Ricky Hill, and then I left there. I was an agent for a year, and then I worked with John Still at Barnet for half a season, then to Charleston Battery in America in the A League, and then from there Florida Premier, and from there to Tottenham to QPR. And before that, during my time in Malta, during the summers, I used to go and work the camps in America. And eventually, when I left Malta, I worked with Ricky Hill at Cocoa Beach, Cocoa Expo, which led me to coaching Florida Tech. So I've done, I've left out a lot, but I've done quite a varied career. I mean, one of the main things for me was because I didn't have a big playing career. It was important to make sure that my profile didn't stop me from getting jobs. So education for me was really important. Doing different things outside football was important.
So you said you touched on about Malta and coaching abroad. Like, did that help you as a coach? Like going to a different culture, different country. How did that help you develop as a coach?
I think it's one of the best things for me, because I think, one, you have to fight to understand the culture, or you have to be open to understanding the culture. Both I think is important, because being open and not understanding it means you just accept. But you have to fight to get your character within that culture. You have to fit your character in the culture. And I think it's always important to realize where other people's experience is and how you can learn from them, because being in England, a lot of the times we think the only place to coach is England. I think you learn more by coaching different people in different ways, and having to adjust your communication, because ultimately coaching is communication, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. Was there any, like, I know you coached in America, Florida. Was it like, in terms of languages or anything, or you didn't have that challenge?
Well, to be fair, when I was in Charleston, it was one of the first times I'd coached a very varied amount of players. Because I was there probably early 2000s, when it was only then that there started being an influx of foreign players throughout the leagues in England. Before that, they were mainly just in the Premier League or the top Championship teams. But there was players from Paraguay, Mexico, obviously the Caribbean and stuff like that. So a few times there was language barriers that had to be overcome. And then obviously when I was in Malta, I mean, back when I was there in the 90s, they spoke three languages. The first one was Maltese, then Italian, then English. So a lot of the Maltese people didn't speak English well. They spoke it, but they didn't speak English well. So a lot of my players didn't speak English. So now it's changed the other way around with the introduction of Sky TV and stuff like that. People speak English everywhere now because it's more readily available. So language barriers for me are interesting, very interesting. What it might take us one word to say, it takes 5 words in another language, and vice versa. What it takes one word might take us a whole sentence.
Yeah. So, coaching abroad, what was your biggest challenge in terms of, like, people talk about being homesick, missing UK, missing family. Like, what was the biggest one for you?
Well, it was two, because the first time I coached abroad, I was in a desperate situation. My career was over. I'd had a bad breakup. I had no children. I had my bad business dealings. Because not having business education, I ended up losing my businesses or whatever I was working at. So I was in a desperate situation. So I was happy. I went actually for a 2-week trial and came back 3 years later.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, so so responsibilities are different. Were different. The second time around, when I went to America, I had a child, so it was very, very difficult. Because he was coming over, I was coming back, and it was very, very difficult. So that balance, for anyone who works abroad, I do feel for them. But however, there's still a balance of putting food on the table as well. Because I think that's important. So communication now, I think is miles better than it was before, because we're speaking here now. You didn't have that back in the day. Where you can speak to your children as if you're in the next room, which actually keeps you connected. Whereas when you're on the phone, it's miles more difficult.
So you got lots of experience in the game. Like, what was your favorite role in terms of like the role that you had? What was your favorite and why?
I think my favorite role has been the one I just did, because I literally had influence on both camps, with the first team and with the academy. So it was interesting to be able to have the discussions with certain managers about what they're looking for, how you can get players into the team, and also influence the coaching to directly help the players to get to the next level. I mean, it's very difficult, very, very difficult, because you can't be seen to be treading on people's toes. But if I was to go back into the game and have a role like that, that would probably be my favorite role.
Well, that sounds good. How do you see, like, you're a big influence on many people's careers, and you coach a lot of players. How do you see youth development? Like what, if someone said to you, what's youth development, how would you define that?
I think youth development is about inspiring people to reach the potential that they can get to, the maximum of their potential. That's what I think it is. I don't think it's necessarily about people being international players or people being international managers and playing at the highest level. It's whatever potential they've got, which is all equal. So if somebody reaches that to me, that's just as good as someone playing for their national team. Or if someone plays, for argument's sake, if I look at someone like a Callum Butcher that was at Tottenham, or Nathan Byrne, and I look at them where they've ended up, at Derby, and Callum's been at Millwall and Burton and places like that, and that's where their potential took them. So to me, that is the same as a Harry Kane or an Andros Townsend, who have reached their potential at that level. I consider them to be equal. And in the same way, so we've got people that have played non-league. So you've got a Sam Cox who's played the non-league, played for Barnet, has become a national team manager, and is now coaching at Wilston. That's for me. I mean, it's not me that's done it; they've done it, and the people around them have done it. I've just been part of the journey. I would consider those players to have been as equal as anybody who's played for their national team or played in the Premier League.
Yeah. What I've never asked you this, but who's the best player that you've coached?
While coaching them, or what did they become? It's different.
Yeah. Okay, so in terms of technically, who's the best player that you've coached technically, and you thinking, oh wow, like this kid or this player is amazing? I know
I don't know.
It's a hard question for you.
It's where they've evolved to. So I would more or less say working with the players. So I worked with Steve Gerrard.
Okay.
But I didn't coach him. He wasn't my player. He wasn't a player that I worked with, but I was happy to work. I was lucky enough to work with him when he became when he was with England.
What age was he at the time?
He was 17, 18.
Yeah.
And we had an England team there with the likes of Joe Coles and Ashley Coles and Leggy Kings and all that sort of thing. So there was really good players there, but he was one of the players. Well, he's a player that I've seen that is, I thought, wow, as a youth player, he physical stature as well as technical ability to dribble, shoot, range of passing, personality. He was, as a youth player, and like I said, I'm not claiming to have coached him. I've worked with him. Someone like that, I thought could play any position very well. So he would have been. So a lot of the times you look at players and people talk about the best players that you've, but at the time you're coaching them, you're coaching them to become what they eventually become. Yeah. So people say Ryan Mason for me. He was one of the best players that I've worked with. Intelligent, good, two-sided, could do a lot of things very, very well. And so he's one of the best. But you look at someone like, say, an Adam Smith, who's at Bournemouth, just underrated. Underrated blockage at Tottenham with Carl Walker, which meant he never got to where he was. But he was like a midfield player playing at fullback, could run all day, good on the ball, intelligent, good 1v1 going forward, fantastic crosser. But he's played in the Premier League for 8 years, maybe, and so I've been really, really fortunate to have worked with some really really good players. I mean, if you look at Andros Townsend as a winger, if you want a prototype winger, you can't sprint capabilities repeatedly with the ball under control, variation in crosses, taught himself to be two-sided. You look at that, and you look back and you just think how lucky I've been to have worked with those players.
Yeah, that's amazing. Tell us about your every coach would listen to this. They want to be, most coaches do want to be first team coaches, and you've had experience in that. Tell us about how it was, the pros, the cons. Just, talk us through it.
Well, the pros of being a first team coach is obviously when you start in footballing community at, what was I, 32.
Mm.
And obviously I've been a first team coach in Malta. So my first job was actually being a first team coach.
Yeah.
And with Ricky in the summers at Cocoa Beach.
Mm.
So when I was in Nashar in Malta, I'd worked with the reserves and the kids just doing little things, but that wasn't my coaching job.
Yeah.
So I've actually gone reverse.
Yeah.
Really, I've actually gone reverse.
Mm.
So for me, the pros of development is obviously the longevity of it and the people that you can help and work with, coaches as well as players over a period of time, and then watch them develop. And the thing is, I'm quite fortunate because people do ring me up. So it's almost like, there's been a lot of belief in stuff that I've done.
Yeah.
So the pros of coaching and developing players is the longevity and how you can continually help to put structures in place or creative ideas in place to help them move on. And then obviously first team, the pros of doing the first team. Pros is obviously your ambition, because because everybody believes first team football is exactly the same as coaching kids. You put the cones out, you do a great session, and players all believe in what you're doing. But the pros of it is obviously the ambition of doing it, the buzz of being standing next to other top managers and pitting yourself against other people, trying to affect a group of players to actually go and win a game at all costs. They're the sorts of things that people get a buzz off. And obviously seeing the fruits of your labor come to the end. I would say almost straight away, but it's because what you're doing is you're working on something, and then at the end of the week you're hoping there's a 3 points. So the satisfaction of that is in there. The cons of it is very, very nerve-wracking. And if you want to be a first team coach, then you have to realize that you're going to have a lot of sleepless nights. The level of control is removed from your hands, and you're going to come into situations where the board might make a decision. You might have players get injured, whereas in youth football, player gets injured, you just put another one in, and it doesn't really matter. Whereas you get a key player gets injured, you could lose the game, and then your job's on the line. You're always at the, you're always got the axe swinging over your head, based on a 30-yarder. So you can murder a team, and the other team score an extraordinary long shot, and you lose, and all your tactics gets questioned based on the swing of a leg. Or not, in the other way around as well. From your point of view, you miss. Crucial incidents affect your whole game plan, or what people think about you as a coach. So there is, and the criticism. Now the criticisms are two different criticisms. When you're working with the youth players, you're going to get the parents, because everybody wants their son to reach the holy grail. But first team, you've got everybody from afar, social media, TV,
man and his dog,
everybody from afar. Man and his dog, they're first in the line. So I would say, but listen, I've been fortunate because I can probably go in any camp now. Tomorrow, if a job came up as a first team job, I've had experience, and to go and work there, I could go and take that job if I wanted to. If an under-9s job came, I'd probably go and take that. So, it's one of the things I always talk to coaches about, being versatile. Unless you've got a big name, be versatile.
100%. Like, was that one of your goals of coaching in the Premier League? Like, was that one of your?
I would imagine when I first did my first football in the community thing, I'd be like the kids. You know, when you're doing the little tournaments and you're saying, yeah, right, you two come over to team 1 and team 2 over to the San Siro, team 3 and 4 over to the Emirates. You know, you're always emulating that the higher level, aren't you? You're always talking about it, and I would say that it would have been probably one of my goals at the beginning.
Yeah.
At the beginning, but my goals have evolved.
Yeah.
Subsequently.
What was I know, you know, people talk about being an assistant first team coach and being the actual, like, the head. Like, I know you was at Tottenham, you was assistant coach there, and then you took over, you know, at QPR as a first team coach, as the head. Like, you know, is there a massive difference between the two?
Well, obviously, as the head, you're the one that has to go in front of the press, and you're the one that's making the final decisions. So there is a difference, but I think in the fact of the emotional side of it, it's a varied difference. But I think the fact is, if you lose, we all lose, don't we?
Yeah.
So you've got the same anxiety as the first team coach as regards winning and losing. But obviously, I think when you're the one that's the figurehead, and you're the one that people are coming to, I think there's always a slight difference.
Yeah. So, like, who's coach that, as a coach growing up, and also the experience that you are, what coach do you look up to, or have you had an influence on? Like,
well, I had a coach educator called Dick Bate that was, you know, fantastic for helping me as regards understanding detail and stuff like that, and coach education, and really opened my mind to a lot of things. But coaches I've worked with, or coaches that I haven't worked with?
Yeah, like, just, you know, like you said, Dick Bate, anyone that you thought, you know.
Well, I worked with Ricky Hill. Ricky Hill was probably, he's, you know, as we know, there's not a lot of black coaches. He's been overlooked, but he was fantastic coach that really honed me in on a lot of things, and creativity and stuff like that. Yeah. And then obviously when I was in Malta, I worked with a guy called Ray Ferrugia, who became the national team coach, and he helped me a lot. And then through my time at the FA, there was people like Craig Simmons on a player development. You know, they helped me understand a little bit more about that. You know, when I went to Nigeria, I was the head coach of the 20s with Paul Smalley. You know, we used to talk a lot about different things there. But John McDermott, really, I think me and him, Phil, speak similar language with different personalities. Yeah. And that bouncing off has helped me as well. And the crew of coaches that we had at Tottenham at the time, with Alex Inglethorpe and Richard Allen and Perry Suckling, Ozzy, Danny Buck, Dan Manich, people like that they were really good. So they push you to become better. Brad Allen, you know, people like that, they push you to become better, because you're always imparting on them, but then they're imparting back on you without you really knowing it, you know. And then I think one of the I would say the boost, but something that pushed me in a slightly different direction but upwards, was when Tim and Les as well, because I was the experienced coach when they came. Some of the stuff they brought to the party actually boosted my understanding, or different things that I learned. You know, at the time, you know, like just two things alone I learned from them was, so I've got the blue box now, you know. So Tim used to talk about getting back into the box, and then I developed that from there, really, even though I had a version of it, but then I sort of really looked on it, it's even more. And then Les used to talk about the forwards, you know, about cutting down their physical output by returning back to the middle of the pitch. So when they go to receive, they're running half the distance. Yeah. And just little things like that, shooting with low backlift. Yeah. You know, and just things like that you pick up from people. You know, and obviously myself and John put the stuff in place at Tottenham, and we battered that around for years when I was in America. And we always came to the same point, but on a different motorway.
Yeah,
if
yeah,
you know what I
no,
mean.
no, I understand. Yeah, and it's still, it's still going now in terms of everything that, not kind of what you put in place, but very similar scenarios in terms of
Yeah,
V1s, 2v2s, and the 75s and stuff like that. So yeah.
yeah, exactly.
And
It's right.
I'm telling you now, like in Japan, they do it for their warm up all the time. Total control, everything. And I look at it and I just, every time I see it, it just reminds me of you. I'd be like, that's why we used to do it. But yeah, so
Yeah.
where do you see yourself in the next 3 years?
Uh, if I can get the projects going that I want to do, coach education, going out to different associations
Mm.
and dealing with coaching, that's where I probably see myself really. Listen, if a job came up, a first team job came up that was financially correct and also a job where you could enjoy and get your teeth into a project, I probably would be irresponsible not to take that because they don't come along all the time. But from an enjoyment point of view, at the moment, I'm in quite a good place because I've just done a bit for the Premier League. I've done a bit for the PFA. I've got some stuff going on in Chicago, which is going to be announced soon as a technical coordinator there. And I've got a few other things, little projects that I want to do. Now that would probably suit me more. The only thing that I'm getting a little bit, I need medication for, is that I'm not coaching at the moment.
Yeah, day to day. I know. I can
Oh
imagine.
God, it's killing me.
Yeah,
It's
'cause I
absolutely
can
killing me.
imagine because I know, when I was at QPR, you was there all the time. Like you never hardly had a day off, did you? So it's like,
No, so it's difficult when you just stop.
Mm,
4 5, it's been 5 weeks, 6 weeks now. I haven't put a mannequin out.
okay.
I haven't put a cone out.
Yeah, that's amazing. But yeah, Chris, that we're done. But listen, thank you for coming
Well,
on the podcast.
anytime.
It's been a pleasure. It's always good to learn from you, like your words, the way you speak, everything. You gave my first job in football, so I really appreciate that as well.
Well, listen, look, you've done well. I mean, one of the things I do look at and think, is important. I look at yourself and Eddie and
mm,
Lee Bang and all the coaches, the young coaches, and listen, look, when you're going through the process, it's hard because you're
yeah,
getting bollocks,
yeah,
right? And you're getting, but without, if you, what a lot of the times people don't look at is look where you are now and
mm,
look at the leadership you've
yeah,
got now. Look at the leadership that all the people who've gone to jobs,
mm,
how they are. You're going into places and you're looking at people and their high standards are low standards for
yeah,
you.
yeah. I remember you saying that. Yeah,
Do you know what I mean? So when you go somewhere, you're thinking you're miles ahead of people
yeah, yeah.
because we all held ourselves to a standard
Mm.
that it's not good when you're learning it, but when you've learned it,
When you've come out.
you understand why it was harsh and
Mm,
why why there's a reason to have standards, because the thing is, we've all got kids,
mm.
so what standard would you hold their teachers to?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, you're right. You said like attending a school, isn't it?
Okay,
No worries. Thanks, Chris. Have a good one.
see you later.
Take
Cheers,
care.
mate.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.